So Leetcode sucks. I would say everything about it, in my opinion, sucks. From the types of questions that exist on the Leetcode platform, essentially these brain teaser type questions, all the way to the philosophy behind Leetcode and Leetcode style interviews. The entire ecosystem of Leetcode sucks. And unfortunately, I am not a rebel, and I will not be standing up to this system. Instead, I will be a good boy and conform to the system and continue doing my Leetcode prep. Over the last year, I have seen companies shifting from like literal Leetcode questions to at least trying to tailor it to the domain of the company itself. But I think by and large, if you're looking at big tech companies, you will still see Leetcode style interviews in mass. With all that being said, I want to talk to you about why I still do Leetcode almost every single day, even though I have a job and I am not actively looking for a job. So this video is going to be broken down into two different parts. The first part being why I am actually doing Leetcode and other types of interview preparation, even though I have a job and I'm not looking for a job. And the second part of it will be how I am doing that, how I am managing it, and making sure that I can carve out enough time to dedicate to any kind of preparation that I want to do, but not burn myself out and not just hate myself every single day for doing Leetcode. So to start this video off, I want to talk about why I do interview prep, not just Leetcode, so other types of interview prep as well, even with a full-time job, even though I'm not looking for a job. So essentially, around this time, actually last year, I was laid off from a software engineering job that I thought was going pretty well, but they did mass layoffs and, that whole thing. But when I was laid off, I was not prepared at all. So I've had to go through this interview gauntlet 2 or 3 times throughout my career. And the hardest part about it is starting. And I should clarify, not necessarily starting for the first time, but just starting over when you're trying to get back up to speed with Leetcode style questions. So for example, the first time that I ever did a Leetcode question, I didn't really have any concept of this space at all. And it took me a really long time to just understand the different algorithms that are asked in these kind of questions, the different strategies that you have at your disposal to solve different questions. And so I did that for a while, and then I finally got a job, and then I never thought about Leetcode again. It didn't even cross my mind until the next time that I started applying for jobs. And so unfortunately what happened is I started doing practice problems again, but I had to start almost completely over from scratch because I did not retain any of that information. And maybe this is different for different folks, but this is not really information or techniques that you're using on a daily basis. So obviously it's going to go to the back of my mind, and at some point it's just going to disappear entirely. So that is exactly what happened. I started looking for jobs again at some point, and I had to start this entire process over from zero. And that's incredibly frustrating because you spend all this time preparing, honing your skills in this Leetcode area, and then you get a job and you don't think about it again. And it would be really nice if this information did stick around, but I think for most people, if you're not actively thinking about it and you're not practicing, that knowledge goes out the window almost immediately. It's kind of like working out a muscle. If you're doing bicep curls all the time for 3 months, and then all of a sudden you're not doing it for 3 months or 3 years, you lose all your muscle. And it's the same exact thing for Leetcode style questions. So bringing this back around to when I was laid off last year, like I said, I was back in this zero state where I had to pick up all of the Leetcode knowledge that I had 2 years ago or 4 years ago whenever I was looking for jobs, and start from zero and get back all that knowledge that I needed in order to perform well in interviews. And granted, I had 8 hours a day now to practice Leetcode, which was just such a fun time. But even that, it takes time. It takes practice and it takes repetitions to get back to a place where you're comfortable performing in interviews and you can actually do well. So essentially what happened is I started practicing, started regaining all these skills that I had lost. But at the same time, I was applying to jobs. And so interviews started coming around while I was still in this practice mode, preparing mode. And these companies would ask me Leetcode style questions, and I did not perform as well as I could have done if I had been more prepared. And that right there is one of the most frustrating feelings, is you've done a lot of the hard work to actually secure that interview, and you have a good chance now that you're in the interview process. All you have to do is perform, but you just don't have all of the skills necessary to perform. Obviously, we can sit here all day and talk about how Leetcode style interviews are not the best way to assess a candidate's actual strengths, and I agree with those. But the fact of the matter is, if you want jobs at these types of companies, you just have to know this. Now, eventually, after my layoff, I was able to find a new job, but I will say that the company that I ended up working for did not ask Leetcode style questions during their interviews. So if I had not had this company, for example, I believe it would have taken me a lot longer to find a job eventually if all the companies that I was applying for and interviewing with asked Leetcode style questions. So now to wrap up the entire why section of this video, essentially, doesn't matter if you were employed, doesn't matter if you have a job right now, especially in today's tech market, it's possible that you won't have a job tomorrow. The layoffs that I had at my last company came out of nowhere. They caught me by surprise, and by not being prepared, I put myself in a position where it was going to be hard to find another job. And I vowed that that was not going to happen again. I want to make sure that I am always looking out for myself, and if something out of my control, like a layoff, is to happen, I'm always ready to jump back into the job market, and I don't have to spend all of this time relearning Leetcode style questions because it is just part of the game. If you can have that knowledge in your head and just call on it whenever you need to, you become a lot more powerful and a lot more agile when you're out looking for jobs. And I know that I won't miss out on these opportunities for all these interviews that I had and I failed because I didn't have that knowledge. So that is the why. I want to be in control of my destiny as much as possible. And now let's talk about the how of how I'm staying prepared. I'm still with a full-time job, again, not looking for a job, but I know if I'm ever put in this situation again, I'll be in a much better situation and I'll give myself a much better chance at success. I'd say the most important piece of the how is if you're doing this with a full-time job, you need to do the absolute bare minimum that you can to maintain the skills and maybe improve them slightly over time. But just like I said, do as little as possible so that you don't burn out, and don't see this as a chore or something that you can't even bring yourself to do. So here's how I'm currently doing that. I'm breaking this down into 3 different sections because these are the 3 types of preparation that are important for me and the types of jobs that I do. So I'm primarily a backend software engineer. So this is what I do. So it's broken down into Leetcode, system design, and just resume tip stuff. So first off, for Leetcode, you don't need the premium Leetcode subscription for this plan. If I'm like deep into interview and grind mode, then I get the premium subscription so I can see the company specific questions, but you don't need to do this when you're just in coasting mode. So for Leetcode, all you're gonna do is the daily problem. Don't do anything more than that. And if the daily problem takes you more than 30 minutes, just stop. Because if you spend more than 30 minutes a day on this, you're going to burn out, you're going to hate it, you're never going to open the app again, and you're going to be back in the same scenario where you don't know anything about these concepts or topics. And it doesn't even have to be every day. So the way that the daily problem works is it'll normally be on a certain topic or a certain algorithm, and then over the course of a few days, it'll get progressively harder and build on the concepts that it took to build the last days and then the day before that. So essentially, you're giving yourself a really nice breadth of topics that you're covering by just doing the daily problem. They'll normally spread it out across a number of different topics, and you can ensure that you're getting a nice breadth of difficulties and also a nice breadth of topics. If you miss a day, it literally doesn't matter. The daily problem from the day before is still there if you want to check it out. Otherwise, you can just hop into the current day's problem, and like I said, it's probably still in that topic, so you should be fine. And if it's taking you more than 30 minutes, literally just stop. It's way better to maybe come back to it the next day. If there's an easier daily problem, maybe you can solve the daily problem in 10, 15 minutes, whatever. You can spend the other 15 minutes looking at that problem that you couldn't solve the day before, and maybe something will come to you. But yeah, in terms of Leetcode, that's it. Don't do anything more than that. Also, keep in mind, this is for coasting mode. This isn't for grind mode. If you're like grinding and trying to get a new job, obviously you're gonna have to do a lot more. So this is just coasting mode if you have a full-time job and you're not really looking for stuff, but you wanna be prepared just in case things happen. So that's Leetcode. Over to system design now. System design is a huge part of software engineering interviews. So you want to be ready to solve these types of problems whenever an interview does come up. Ideally, if you are working and you're in a job right now and you're working as a software engineer, your day-to-day is actually going to be a lot more applicable to these style interviews than it is, whatever you're doing to a Leetcode style interview. So what I do is I just keep track of all the things that I'm doing in terms of system design at work, and then just keep notes of those things. Remember what you did or how you solved a problem as it pertains to system design. And that's normally going to be a good thing that you can talk about at some point during a system design interview. If you don't get a ton of that experience at your job, maybe you're just not able to be part of those decisions, or new projects don't spawn up that often, what you can do is build your own projects. If you're familiar with the channel, you know that I just build stuff on this channel and build SaaS applications. So it's honestly really great system design practice to build your own applications. All of the knowledge that you gain from doing that is always going to be directly applicable to most system design style interviews. Outside of that, I just watch some YouTube videos. So there are various channels all over YouTube that talk about system design related topics. So for example, I'll watch Byte Go pretty often. I feel like every time I watch one of those videos on a topic that I thought I knew everything about, I always learn something new. Just always going in with an open and curious mind is going to be great when you're learning new topics. There's new advancements all the time, new techniques. So just keeping up on the industry as much as possible is always going to be helpful in terms of system design. Now, the final piece of this is keeping your resume up to date. So also part of my layoff, when I was not prepared in terms of interviews, I also wasn't prepared in terms of resume. So the last thing that you want to do when you are suddenly out of a job and then you need to start applying to jobs is update your resume. It is a lot easier to keep this up to date while you're working at your job and completing projects and delivering impact. A really effective technique is keeping a brag book of all of the things that you have accomplished at your job. So if you have led a project, or you have delivered some kind of business impact, or anytime somebody commends you for some type of work that you did, documentation, testing, cross-team collaboration, all that good stuff, keep a brag book. So essentially all the good things that you've done at your company, just keep a list of this somewhere so that you can reference it and turn these into bullet points for your resume. Trying to fill your resume out from projects that you did a year, 2 years ago is very difficult, and you will likely miss some of the big impactful things, especially in terms of numbers and metrics that you have from those projects. So keeping track of that as you go is going to be the easiest way to make sure that your resume stays up to date and has all of the relevant information that it needs. That's really all I got though. I just wanted to share my experience and what I'm doing now to put myself in a better position just in case something were to happen again. I think the name of this game is just looking out for yourself as much as possible. Companies love saying that we're a family, but families don't lay each other off. So you always have to do everything that you need to do for yourself and your family and make sure that you're looking out for yourself. If y'all got any other strategies for staying prepared while you have a full-time job and not burning out, please leave them as a comment down below. I would love to read about them and just see if y'all are doing anything different. So thanks again for watching all the way through. I really do appreciate that. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one.